Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look at the Pittsburgh Penguins and kind of seeming like the fragile, made of glass Pittsburgh Penguins. What's happened to the Penguins this year? We're going to talk about that today. Now, this is something that I think a lot of Penguins fans have been worried about since they won those Stanley Cups. I think their last cup was 2016, 2018. Might have been 2018, right? I think they won back-to-back in 17 and 18. So whatever the case. It's been 4 years now, and going into 2023, it'll be 5 years since they last won a cup. And it seems like progressively they've started to go down. And I think the real perception of this team changed when they lost in 2018. I don't know. So they did, yeah. So 2016 and 17, they won back-to-back cups. So I'm pretty sure. Nashville and San Jose. That was 16 and 17. And in 18, they lost to the Washington Capitals, and that changed the tide in the entire division. And Washington kind of became the leader of that division for a couple of years, won a Stanley Cup in 18, and kind of rode that momentum. And Pittsburgh never really got that back. But this year, it seems to be more than making the playoffs and just not playing well. Now, they're struggling during the regular season. And they've done this before. I am not counting out Crosby and Malkin, and I think you'd be stupid to do that because you look at the time that Crosby and Malkin have been on the Penguins. I think there's only been one season, which was Crosby's rookie season, that the Penguins had not made the playoffs. That's right. Since Crosby's joined the Penguins, they have missed the playoffs only once. And he's been around for a little while now. I don't know. 30, 50 years? How old is Crosby now? Like 80? Something like that? So you guys get what I'm saying. This is a team that is consistently, almost to their own detriment, super consistently good at making the playoffs, but sometimes struggles when they get in. And that's been more of the story recently. Now, you look at where they sit in the standings right now. They are 5-6-2 with 12 points on the season, 7th in the Metropolitan Division, which means only the Columbus Blue Jackets are behind them, which is a little bit concerning. And to start this season, they actually played well to start the year. Their margin of victory kind of seems to be going down here. They started off really good and then all of a sudden just tanked, and then they obviously beat Washington, so now there's a little more sense of, okay, there's something to be excited about. Now, what's even more concerning here is the amount of injuries that have piled up here in the month of November. So they had a couple of injuries. Teddy Bluger has been on the injured reserve since last month. Jeff Carter is out for Saturday's game against Pittsburgh. They messed that one up, but okay. He's been out with a lower body injury, and that was back November 5th. Pierre-Olivier Joseph and Jan Ruda left Wednesday's game against Washington. So what is the status of that? Because those are two defensemen out, which is concerning for the Penguins. And that's something to definitely keep an eye on. You look at their schedule so far, it's been kind of a weird up and down thing, right? They won their first two games combined 12-4. They won 6-2 against Arizona, 6-2 against Tampa. They lost to Montreal, won 6-1 in Pittsburgh against the LA Kings. So those first three games at home, in each of those games, they put up 6 goals, which is just mind-boggling. They played really well. They beat Columbus 6-3, so a lot of sixes in those games. And then they started to lose. They went on that West Coast road trip, and this season has kind of fallen off for them. And, it seems like the Devils that fared well on the West Coast, and not so much like the Penguins. The Penguins got really battered in that West Coast road trip. You look at, they beat Columbus. Since then, they lose 6-3 to Edmonton, 4-1 to Calgary, 5-1 to Vancouver, 3-1 to Seattle, 6-5 back at home, an overtime loss against the Boston Bruins. So now they're losing games back at home, and they're letting that road trip get to them at home. So now a 6-game losing streak turns into a 7. They lose to Buffalo in 6-3. They lose to Seattle at home, 3-2. So they're on a 7-game losing streak before finally snapping it against one of their crosstown rivals in the Washington Capitals on the road. That was a huge win for the Penguins. But even at this point, through 13 games, they're still 5-6-2 on the season and second worst in their division. And Unfortunately, they're starting another road trip. Shocking. They play Toronto, they play Montreal, they play one game at home against Toronto, and they're back on the road for a Midwest trip before Thanksgiving where they play Minnesota, Winnipeg, and Chicago. So this is not a schedule for the faint of heart. And with how the Penguins have played at home, especially to start the season, was extremely good. I mean, even that loss against Montreal, that's probably a toss-up game in overtime. And they dominated in the scoring department those first 3 games at home. 18 goals in those first 3 home games and scoring 6 in each of them at PPG Paints. So they were doing something right there. And then things have just dwindled for this team on that road trip. It really, really hurt them, and now it started to affect them. So it's going to be important for the Penguins that they kind of get back to the roots. Now you look at, one of the roots of the problem here, goals for 46 goals this season. That's 11th in the league. I think, unfortunately, a lot of that is from those first 3 games at home where they put up 6 goals in those contests. Other than that, they've kind of struggled to score, right? I mean, on that West Coast road trip after Columbus, they scored 3 against Edmonton, 1 against Calgary, 1 against Vancouver, 1 against Seattle. They struggled to score goals there. And that's been one of their problems, is their goals against has been really a problem. They've given up 45 goals this season, which is 23rd in the entire league. And that's definitely a little concerning, especially when you look at the average. Their penalty kill well below average at 75%, which the average is 78%, so they're under that. And that's not something you expect from the Pittsburgh Penguins or want to see. Same thing as the power play. This one's a little more concerning because the Penguins run a lot of energy on the power play, right? You look at that two-headed monster of Malkin, Crosby, and even Letang coming up. Those guys are supposed to drive offense on the power play. They're supposed to be a threat and a deterrent. That hasn't been the case this year. They're under 19% on the power play, and the average is over 21%, 21.8%. So they're struggling on the power play, they're struggling on the penalty kill, and even in just regular time, they're giving up a lot of goals. And that's where you look at the goaltending as a bit of the problem. Their save percentage across the team is .898, which is below the .901 save percentage from the rest of the league. And a lot of those issues stem from both goalies. Tristan Jarry has got 4 wins in his first 8 games, a .903 save percentage, a 3.38 goals against average, which that one's kind of telling. Casey DeSmith has 5 wins in his 5... He has 1 win in his 5 appearances. So obviously that's not good enough. And the Penguins are not getting good goaltending. And that was the concern that I had last year. And they played quite well. They had a redemption season, but it seems like this year it's kind of fallen off again. And you could see from the production, kind of the same story. Crosby, of course, leads the way with 15 points. Malkin, Gensel, Zucker, Rust, Letang, and then drop-off. Then you start to see, you want to see a little bit more from that depth. Guys like Ryan Poehling and I know Ruda and Pierre-Olivier Joseph are hurt now, but that's kind of concerning. You need to see a little bit more from Danton Heinen and Brock McGinn. You need more. Even from Brian Rust, who only has 8 points, that's okay, but he's got to pick that up for the Penguins at this point. They're playing okay, and it's not the end of the world. They didn't lose their season so far, but in this division, you can't afford to go on a 7-game losing streak, especially on the West Coast. Now, the positive is it was on the West Coast. It's not like they lost all 7 of those games back-to-back with the Rangers, back-to-back with the Flyers and Washington and the Islanders and the Devils. So there is some reason for optimism. And they have a chance to kind of change that tide going into the new year, because in January, the end of December going into January, they play a lot of divisional games. They play Carolina, New York, Carolina, the Islanders, New Jersey at the end of December. 5 of those 6 games are divisional games at the end of the year. Those are crucial for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I look at like a key deadline for when we should reevaluate the Penguins and really see where they're at. We're going to talk again in January. right around the Winter Classic probably, because they're going to build some buzz for that, as they are in the Winter Classic. And that's something you can build momentum, right? You build momentum winning some big divisional games. You have to go to the Islanders UBS Arena. You have to go down to Carolina. That's a big game there. Before you play on January 2nd against the Boston Bruins at Fenway Park. There's a couple of big games here for the Pittsburgh Penguins at the end of this year. And those are the games where you really have to say, this is where the Penguins seem to stand. So the two big concerns they have, the defense aside, I don't know how big of an injury those will end up being. And you guys can let me know in the comments kind of an update as this kind of progresses. But losing Jan Ruda and Pierre-Olivier Joseph, it's not Letang being injured or Dumoulin. And I probably just jinxed it saying that. But it's always somebody. And that team, those are two starting defensemen out. You lose two starting centers with Bluger and Carter. Yes, they're not on the top line, but they can play center. Those are key losses. And the goaltending's not playing that great, and it just doesn't seem like they're playing well defensively, and it's going to be even worse now when you start going to Wilkes-Barre looking for depth guys to play defense. It is quite concerning for the Penguins. It's not the end of the world, but you really have to get yourself kind of prepared for your Super Bowl game against the Boston Bruins in January. And at the end of December, like I said, they have 5 of 6 games against Metropolitan Division opponents. That is going to be crucial for them going into the new year, into that Winter Classic, in terms of where the Penguins will stand. So that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know what you think down below. What do you guys think of the Penguins? It's definitely disappointing, and we've all been kind of waiting for when does the shoe drop on the Penguins and they start to finally fall off. This could be the beginning of that, guys. Let me know what you think down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.